This session is co-hosted by the Early Childhood Education program at UBC with the Center for Early Childhood Education and Research, CSER, and the Edith Landau Virtual Learning Center. And so having said that, my name is Shannon Braden. I'm an associate professor in the School of Kinesiology in the Faculty of Education, and I'm currently the director of CSER. And so with that, though, I'd just like to say hello, and I would just like to also acknowledge Dr. Lori Ford, who's here with us, and she's the director of the Early Childhood Education at UBC. Dr. Jensen, who is the director of the Edith Landau Virtual Learning Center. She's not with us here today, but is also a very important and integral member of this presentation series, as well as Dr. Iris Berger, who's also here with us today. So Iris, having said that, I'm actually going to hand the screen over to you because Dr. Berger is actually going to provide our land acknowledgement so that we're starting off always in a good way with our professional development series. So Dr. Berger.
Thank you so much, Shannon. And it is a very special honor and a very big responsibility to do the land acknowledgement this morning and always. Today, I'm speaking to you from a place that is known today as Vancouver. And it was only during the COVID-19 pandemic, when we started working from home, that I learned something very unique about this land from which I'm speaking to you today. So when we are on campus at UBC, we acknowledge the traditional and ancestral and unceded territories of the Musqueam people. But where I'm situated in Vancouver, I learned that I am to acknowledge 3 nations. So I would like to acknowledge that I am speaking to you today from the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish peoples. And when I thought about the session today, and as well as the learning, what we're going to be learning from Angela, I thought about a very special concept that I learned about recently, and I wanted to share it with you. And the concept does come from an Indigenous tradition, and it is called a dish with 1 spoon. So bear with me for a minute when I tell you a little bit about a dish with 1 spoon. And if you've heard about this concept before, again, just let me share it with you one more time. The term a dish with 1 spoon refers to a concept developed by the Indigenous people of the Great Lakes region in northeastern North America. It was used to describe how land can be shared to the mutual benefit of all of its inhabitants, just like the land that I'm sitting on today. According to the Haudenosaunee, the concept originated many hundreds of years ago and contributed greatly to the creation of the Great League of Peace. A dish with 1 spoon was often mentioned by Indigenous people while making treaties with one another to avoid violent conflict. The dish represents the land that is to be shared peacefully, and the spoon represents the individuals living on and using the resources of the land in a spirit of mutual cooperation. The European settlers had a much different view than Indigenous peoples when making treaties because they believed in the concept of private property. Therefore, they could not or would not try to understand the notions behind a dish with 1 spoon. One of the core values with the idea of a dish with 1 spoon is that those who use the land should not abuse the land. In other words, individuals and groups should only take what they need from the land so that there will be a healthy, long-term, sustainable environment. When speaking on this point, Anishinaabe and Métis historian and educator Karen Domal wrote that all participants in the agreement or treaty had the responsibility to ensure that the dish would never be empty by taking care of the land and all of the living beings on it. So I'm hoping that you will keep this beautiful concept of a dish with 1 spoon for the rest of the session, and also whenever you're doing or listening to a land acknowledgement. This is also an opportunity, if you'd like, to share where you're from in the chat. Thank you for this opportunity. And again, my name is Iris Berger. I am an assistant professor of teaching within the Faculty of Education. And I think from taking a little peek at the names, I'm familiar with many of you. Good to be here today. Thank you.
Aichka, thank you, Iris, for that wonderful, beautiful land acknowledgement. So I'm going to pass the screen over to Dr. Ford, who is going to introduce our wonderful presenter, Dr. Angela Lowe, today. And so you don't need to hear from me any longer. Go ahead and off to you, Dr. Ford.
Thank you so much. Again, just in my role as the director, always thrilled. I have to tell you, for me to say I'm thrilled to get up for a workshop on a Saturday morning is saying a lot these days. But many of you are participating. This Prodi series that we've had going has been very well received, and we're appreciative of that. But not only that, I'm super excited to be able to introduce Dr. Angela Lowe, who I've known since before she was Dr. Lowe, when she was just Angela Lowe, amazing grad student roaming the halls of my department. But again, it's a great pleasure. I'm a kind of a card-carrying member of her fan club out there, but her current role is as the provincial lead for the Early Years Health and Wellness Promotion Initiative through Child Health BC. But that is just one of many roles. That's her current position. She has a master's and PhD in human development, learning, and culture from my home department. Again, we love to see when our own go out and have successes. I think one of the things about Angela, and I've known this since she was a graduate student, she has a very, very long history of service and commitment to the profession. She's a very well-respected workshop presenter with a lot of different groups. She's done a lot of work with the Dalai Lama Center. She's a very active presenter and with a number of community agencies and the local school boards. We're very privileged in our early childhood education program that she redesigned a social emotional learning course for our graduate students. I know some of them, this is the part I was joking, that it's just a fabulous course. The students love it. They love Angela. I think one of the things that's most lovely about Angela, though, is, her focus of her research is on health and well-being and kindness. But as you get to know her, she just really embodies that as a person as well. And so we're just really honored and privileged that you're joining us today. You're in for a real treat. So thank you, Angela, for doing this for us.
Thank you, Dr. Ford, and good morning, everyone. Oh my goodness, I'm just drinking all that in. I'm glad it's recorded because then I can play it to my family and just show them all these other sides of me. But thank you for that. No pressure at all to deliver this workshop after that. And thank you, Iris. That was a lovely, lovely concept and idea, and I'm going to carry that with me in my heart. Well, good morning, everyone, and I am excited that we're all in this virtual Zoom room this morning. I'm excited to spend the next couple of hours with you, and I think it's really important for us to have some fun this Saturday morning, as well as have an opportunity for us to talk a little bit more about the inner worlds of children. And so if it's okay, I'm going to start sharing my screen. And as I'm doing this, I want to acknowledge too that I today am gratefully zooming in from the unceded and traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. And yeah, I found it really, really nourishing and important to take a moment to consider the ground beneath our feet before we enter into a space of teaching and learning. So thank you for that, Iris, and it's a nice way to get started today. So I'm going to start sharing my screen here. Oh, hang on, that's the wrong screen. All right, that's the technical mistake out of the way now, and hopefully that's the last one today. All right, so can folks see the my slides here at all?
Yes, we can, Angela.
Perfect. Yeah, so this is today's session, and I just want to point out, and I always like to bring into my spaces kids that I know. So on the right, this is my daughter Risa, or my child Risa. And then that's their friend Diana on the left. And Risa is actually 11 years old now, but I just want to hold on to, to when they were little. And yeah, and so you'll see Risa pop up a few times in today's session. But what I wanted to do is to, sorry, I'm going to ask, do you see the whole screen or do you see my notes? Can someone tell?
We just see the screen.
I
We can't
just see the
your
whole
notes.
screen.
Sorry, I'm going to do this again because I like to see you as well. Just let me do some little juggling. Yeah, okay. Yeah, but in this workshop that we're going to talk about the inner worlds of kids, I wanted to start by maybe paying a little bit more attention to our own inner worlds, the inner worlds of these bodies that are sitting down here. Because one of the things that I've learned from almost 2 decades of teaching is that when the bodies arrive in the space, whether it's a room or in front of the computer, sometimes the hearts and the minds are not quite there yet. So I don't know about you, but I wonder if some of you are maybe still, thinking about something that happened yesterday, or wondering about something that you might eat later on. Or if you're like me and you've had a bit of a rushed morning, that maybe as you arrive in this space, a part of you is not quite here yet. So how I'd like to start all my sessions is just to take a moment to settle in mindfully to this space of learning so that we're present and ready to learn. And so how that happens for me, and I invite you to do this along with me, is taking a moment to just check in with your body right now. If you're sitting, feeling yourself sit. If you're standing, feeling yourself stand. And just taking a moment to notice what's going on inside, whether you have a lot of energy or whether you're low energy. So I'm noticing that I've just had a giant cup of coffee, everybody. So I'm pretty buzzed right now, and I have some wigglies, and so I'd like to invite you to do something with me, and feel free to do it or not. If you're feeling high energy, this is a helpful thing to do. So what I'd like to invite you to do is just to shake out your hands like this. Or you can, if you've had a lot of coffee as well, even bring your shoulders in and just doing some movement to kind of connect your body to the present moment. And if you're doing this and you're following along, I'd like you to kick it up a notch, just go a little bit quicker for now. There's a point to this, trust me. And then take a big breath in, and then, and let's exhale into stillness. And I invite you to close your eyes if this feels comfortable to you, but if not, just kind of maybe looking down off the screen for a moment, letting your gaze be soft. And just noticing for a moment any sensations that are happening within your body. So maybe like me, you might be feeling some energy or like a little champagne fizz that's coming up your hands. Just taking a moment to feel how it feels to be alive in your body right now. And maybe noticing your breath here, taking a nice, delicious inhale in. I invite you to let something go as you exhale. Whew. We'll do one more biggest inhale this morning. Fill yourself up. Just letting your shoulders drop from your ears as you exhale. Whew. And can we do one more inhale together, and maybe this time stretching out and up, giving a nice big stretch because we are bodies and bodies need to move. And exhale as we arrive back to the front of your screen. I'd like to invite you to notice if anything has changed or shifted internally and externally. Then if you like, maybe even putting in some comments on the chat as to how that felt. Was it hard to do this morning or not? And so to me, it's a way of paying attention to transitions. Quite often, whether it's with children or with adults, we have so many transitions during the day. We move into classrooms, we move into workspaces, and then we come home from a long day of work. And kids are moving from activity to activity, from naps to outside time to circle time. And oftentimes I found it really helpful, and I encourage you to pay attention to transitions, just simply noticing if the bodies that are in this space are ready for what's coming next, and maybe doing something just to smooth out the transition a little bit. I wonder if that makes sense, and you can kind of tell me in the chat how that went for you. Okay. Yeah, so as we go further down today's workshop, because this is a workshop on well-being, that our own well-being here is also really important, as we're humans in this space as well. So I want to encourage you to take care of yourself along the way. And what this means is anytime you'd like to take a pause, step out, stand up, have a stretch, just recognizing that you're a body as well as a mind that's in front of the screen right now. And also, along the same lines, kind of thinking about being thoughtful about others in this space as well. I'm hoping, because it's a nice little group today, and there's so much wisdom in this room, that we can have opportunities to share with each other. So I'd like to build in some breakout rooms today too. And as we do that, I'm just going to invite you to be thoughtful about the space that we're in together up here at the moment, and an invitation to share mindfully, to recognize that there are many different backgrounds and cultural experiences, and any experiences that exist in this space. And maybe if you hear something that doesn't sit well, to assume goodwill. And as we discuss, maybe focusing on ideas and concepts, not people. And finally, here's an encouragement for you. If you're somebody that usually holds back, that maybe this morning is an opportunity to take up some space, and share your thoughts a little bit more boldly. And if you're someone that shares a lot, then maybe this is an opportunity to, sit back and make space and just, do something different. Okay. With that to start, I know that Laurie had introduced me a little bit, but I just want to tell you a little bit more about the waters I swim in, or why I came to this work and how it's important to me. So before I moved to Vancouver about 11 years ago, and before I moved here, I spent 10 years in China and in Australia, and mostly doing work on emotional intelligence. So a key idea here, and this is going to be woven in through our workshop this morning, the key idea of emotional intelligence are that feelings matter, and how people feel matter, and everyone is always feeling something, and what they feel drives behavior. So the ability to recognize when we're feeling something, recognizing emotions in ourselves and others, and being able to manage our emotions and regulate them for others is really important for success. So that's the key idea behind emotional intelligence. And I'll share with you a personal story that I was teaching emotional intelligence for 10 years to people in the workplace, helping organizations kind of build an emotional intelligence strategy for learning and leadership. And then I was starting to feel that I was really emotionally intelligent, and because I was going around dispensing advice and answering questions. And then I became pregnant with my first child, and I was thinking, this kid is so lucky, about to be born to such an emotionally intelligent person. And then I had the baby, and then it didn't really go that way. This kid did not get the emotionally intelligent goddess that I was anticipating. And in fact, I found myself in crisis. I found myself really sort of kicking walls and getting really mad at, my husband, my parents, and even my child sometimes. And so that was a bit of a crisis for me, because I thought, how could I have understood so deeply about emotional intelligence for almost a decade and not be able to exercise those strategies that I've learned and, giving other people on. And so then I thought maybe the problem was the kid, and I needed to find out more about children. So what I did then was I went to school and I did a master's in child development. And here the key idea of child development, as many of you know, is that we need to meet children where they're at, that children have capabilities and needs that are specific to where their brains are at, where their bodies are at, and that stage of life. So not thinking of kids as half adults, but really they're fully children. And I think that that applies not just for children, but to anybody on this sort of long lifespan development of social and emotional learning or social and emotional development, that simply people are just where they're at, and we have to meet them where they're at. And so this, so of course, I won't be any surprise to you that I had a master's in child development and realized that really the problem wasn't the child, it was still me. And so what I've really come to land at is, and I'm very passionate about this field, is the field of social and emotional learning. So understanding that social and emotional development happens across the lifespan, that there are things that we can do intentionally and purposefully to build those skills and qualities that allow us to thrive in life, that have, allow us to have robust mental health, to get along with others, to promote kindness and compassion, and just to be more successful as people, as partners, as students, as workers. And so this is the water I swim in right now. And this is something that I'm very passionate about bringing through my work and my teaching, that there is a way to intentionally learn and cultivate these resources, the social and emotional skills and qualities that are proven by science and can be observed very easily to bring a sense of well-being and to help with success in life. Yeah, so that's what I do. Okay, so with that in mind, here's the shape of the session that I've planned for us. We're going to talk a little bit about promoting social and emotional development, and talk a little bit about what matters for social and emotional development, like what are the factors that impact young children's development of these skills and qualities. And then specifically, I'm going to dive into emotion understanding and also self-regulation. I'm just going to come out here and say I don't love the word self-regulation. I think it over-promises, because really, I'll talk about it now, that even as we talk about self-regulation, it is at the end of a long, long road of co-regulation and external regulation. So I think with the kids that we're working with at these ages, what we're doing is we're planting seeds for self-regulation, but we're not really expecting to see them really sprout and land and be stable until quite possibly 20 years down the road, because we know that our brains are still growing well into our 20s, right? Yeah, and finally, I also want to talk about the role of the adult in this work as well. Okay, so I want to start with a question now, because I've spoken long enough, I think, at the moment. And I want to start with kind of inviting you to consider this question. What does it mean to consider the social and emotional lives of children in our work and in our daily lives, Chloe? What does that mean to you? So just having a moment to pause and consider that. And then I'm going to show you one of my favorite videos. And this video is developed by the Dalai Lama Center for Peace and Education that was founded here in Vancouver. And if you know them, maybe you know their work of, they speak about social and emotional learning as heart, mind, well-being. And they have a mandate to educate the heart. And I think that this is well aligned with what it means to consider the social and emotional inner lives of children. And so I'm going to invite everyone to watch this video for a moment. And as you finish the video, I'd like you to think about the answers to what does that mean to consider the inner lives? And also, what does it mean to educate the heart? Like, what does it mean to you? All right. Here you go. Let me know if you can't hear this. I'm hoping you can.
When a child is born, we do everything we can to protect them, nurture them, love them. A child's heart and mind are fragile. As they grow, we want to teach them everything we know. We send them to school to fill their minds with wonderful knowledge, to give them the tools they need for life. At school, they get a taste of what things are like in the world outside. There is friendship, romance, disappointment, embarrassment, discrimination, and bullying. But are the tools we give them enough to prepare them for this world? We have an enormous responsibility and an amazing opportunity If we truly want to prepare them for the world outside, we must also educate the heart. Because to navigate the world outside with compassion, acceptance, and tolerance, we need to teach them compassion, acceptance, and tolerance. This can begin in our schools, and it can start today. It can happen at hockey practice, dance class, at day camps, and music lessons. And it's already happening around the world with astonishing results. If we want our children to grow into socially and emotionally capable young people, we must ask for a balanced education that puts importance on educating both the mind and the heart.
Hey, maybe many of you have seen that video. I think the two students that I have in here, Fatima and Abby, have seen it. Yeah, so just wondering your thoughts on what does it mean to educate the heart. Just taking a moment, and I'd love to see some answers in the chat, and you're even, you're welcome if you'd like to be very brave to unmute yourself and share your thoughts. But even just thinking, what matters to you to teach kids, to help to grow in kids? And even maybe, another way to think about it is, what are some skills and qualities that have helped you succeed in life that are really kind of essential to your well-being today that you'd really like to teach and help to grow in the children that you look after? Okay, I'm just going to say that I'm really comfortable with uncomfortable pauses. So I'm just going to hang on and wait and look for some answers in the chat. Or you can raise your hands. Yeah, thank you. Planting seeds of self-regulation, spending time with kids and being present at time. Yeah, that's lovely. So I'm seeing self-regulation, Ali checking in with how they're doing each day, finding out how they learn best. Yeah, so starting from the child and co-creating opportunities. Listening to the child. Thank you, Debbie. Hearing emotions and words and body language and helping them with that. Yeah, so that's fantastic. And, feel free to keep putting things in the chat. Hello, Thomas. Good morning. Teaching kids to be compassionate, just like we would teach reading and math. Absolutely. Can see that I'm in the group with everyone who, just so many like-minded folks, the balance between heart and mind. Yeah, helping children accept that it's okay to feel all their emotions. That's right, Kelly. I'm working on that myself, but it's true. Understanding the minds. And yeah, it is looked at differently, Shannon, you're right. And I'd love to hear more about that today as well. Being a Chinese mother to Canadian kids, that's definitely one of those tensions that keep happening in my journey of parenthood. Thank you for that. And yeah, so it's fantastic. Like, I know then that we're in a room where that the goal isn't this. Like, this is not, just a room full of Zen, kind of creepy, I think, if we had kids just looking like this all day. I like the idea of it. It's good if they can do that for a moment. But the goal isn't children who are Zen and passive, but really it's about building this capacity for joy, for engaging with whatever life throws at you. And, maybe even sort of encountering hardships and falling down, but being able to get up again and being able to engage fully with life, to feel love and feel joy and feel happiness when that's available, but also to not shy away and navigate and bounce back from adversity, because we know that's always going to be adversity. So that's the goal of promoting, social and emotional development mindfully and intentionally. And how do we do this? And I think many of you would have seen this already, but I just want to talk about 3 different frameworks. I find frameworks to be really, really helpful. I love frameworks. I think that's part of my retirement plan, would just be to create frameworks for a lot of things. But I love frameworks because frameworks are so useful, and it helps us be intentional at seeing, observing, and promoting these skills, right? Like so that we can, once we have the words and the framework to consider it, we can study it, we can talk about it, we can recognize it when we see it in classrooms, in homes, in communities. And then because we see it, we can have the language and a framework to help capture probably what a lot of you already do to promote social and emotional development, and to nurture it, to teach it. So yeah, I'll just talk you quickly through this. Today's workshop isn't about frameworks. I really want to get to the practical aspects of this work. But here is some for you to consider. On the top left, you have the First Nations perspective on health and wellness. And I also want to bring, to this space that social and emotional learning is a fairly new language of words for something that has existed for so long. It's not new. So many ideas of how to look at how to consider the inner worlds of kids and to promote the social and emotional qualities already exist in so many homes, so many families for thousands and thousands of years. Like it looks differently, and it's just described. We just have a new set of language to describe it. And so, as you can see in the First Nations perspective of health and wellness, the human being, which includes us, which includes children, as well, when the emotional and mental and physical and spiritual health is being looked after, and that this is not, and this sits in the context of wisdom and respect and relationships. Like these are essential to the well-being of the person. And then it's not removed from community, it's not removed from the land and the family as well. So right away, there is this understanding that in order to promote the well-being of the child, there are not just internal qualities to consider, but also in relation to others and in relation to the land. And then on the right, top right, there is the CASTLE framework, which is the one that's really well used in schools today. In schools at this university, I teach using this framework as well. And it gives a separate set of language for us to navigate. And so, as you can see in this framework, that social and emotional learning or development is broken into 5 distinct domains. There is the skills and qualities associated with self-awareness. Do I know what I'm feeling? Do I know who I am? Do I know the thoughts in my head? To self-management, do I have the skills and capabilities to navigate those thoughts, feelings, and be able to manage my behaviors, my attitudes, my actions? And then there's the social awareness and relationship skills, which are all the skills that speak to or contribute to how we are with people. And then finally, there's the responsible decision-making piece. And then also CASTLE updated this framework in 2017 to include these rings that are out there, because it became very evident that this work cannot happen just by focusing on the child, but it happens in the context of classrooms, in schools, and in homes and communities, and that those partnerships and those policies are necessary for a whole approach into helping kids be well, right? Yeah, and finally, I wanted to point to the framework by the Dalai Lama Center as well, because it's a local framework and it's well used in the communities here. And I really like this framework too, because it kind of keeps it simple. Like it simply says to have heart, mind, well-being, to thrive and be successful and be well. Children and adults need skills and qualities in these 5 areas, and they will seem similar. There is being alert and engaged, secure and calm, having the skills to get along with others, which is those social skills, to be compassionate and kind, and then to solve problems peacefully. So I'm offering these up here for you. These are very common ones. And maybe one of your homework this weekend, if you haven't already, is to perhaps adopt a framework for your work. And a framework is really helpful to help us validate what we already do intuitively around kids and in our care of kids, but also to help us identify where some gaps might be. So maybe you're at a center where there's a lot of activities and everyone is really great at promoting secure and calm, or helping kids be compassionate and kind, or really paying attention to relationship skills. But maybe there's another area that might require a little bit more attention. So they're helpful to have to guide the work that we do in promoting social and emotional development because it's intentional work. Any questions or comments? Just going to look at the chat box for a moment. Yeah, thank you for a few more shares there. Okay, so what we know is the early years is a really important time for social and emotional development. Just quickly, this picture here is a picture that I love. These are two out of three of my kids. So the oldest kid is Sienna. Sienna is 14 today. So teenage years comes with a whole other bag of how to navigate with emotional intelligence. And then that's Risa on the side. And there's a baby that isn't mine, but I just really would love to have. That's no, that sounded really creepy. No, that's my niece. That's Catherine. And yeah, just Catherine is now 6 as well. Like they've all grown a little bit. But yeah, I just wanted to speak to how the early years are a really important window for social and emotional development. So there's now lots of evidence, from the literature and especially coming out of HELP as well, the Human Early Learning Partnership in BC, showing that very young kids are coming in with already significant differences in their social and emotional skills, and that these skills really matter for their experiences, not just at home, but also in the centers. Kids who are assessed to have higher social and emotional competencies, they feel better about themselves, they have more positive interactions and relationships at the centers and in the communities, they display less emotional distress, less aggressive behavior. And then we also know something about the stickiness of these skills, like that kids who kind of display higher social and emotional competency in preschool. There's an article that came out from Human Early Learning Partnership showing that across BC, kids that have higher competencies in preschool, this is linked to just greater success and well-being in grade 4. And then there are studies that show that these are sticky through to adulthood, where those who had higher competencies as children had better relationships, were higher employed, and just enjoyed better mental health as well. So there's something about the stickiness of these qualities and skills. And the good news is that these skills can be built with support. I think maybe some time ago, before we have these frameworks to consider, we might think that it's a lot to do with temperament and personality and, really more fixed than they really are. But now we know from, over a decade of research on social and emotional development that skills can be built. Kids who go through programs that target specific skill development do show improvement in those particular skills at the end of the year. So there is all that to say. This is an important window of development, and there are things that we can intentionally do to help children build these skills and qualities. No pressure, just saying, really important time for them. When I first came across these research, I was freaking out because I had 2 young kids and I was thinking there's no time to rest. We need to be really working on their skills here. And it was pretty, I got to a point where I was like, there was paralysis by analysis, if you know what I mean. I was over analyzing everything they were doing and what I can do better. But so don't stress too much, because I also want to share this, that there are many different ways that we can help promote social and emotional development. And teaching and modeling skills is simply one of them. Like, sure, there are those teachable moments during the day that we can really make more of, and it's important to do that. But it's not the most, in a way, the teaching of skills is maybe even not the most important piece of work, especially for children as young as the ones that we look after. And there are other 2 blocks that are really important in this work as well. And one of them is to build safe and nurturing relationships and environments. And the quality of these relationships and environments really set the foundation for social and emotional development. Like, they are perhaps maybe the most critical block in this sort of triangle of blocks here. And then teaching and modeling skills, but also the adults' well-being, like the adults' own self-care, and their own social and emotional competence. is also a really important part of this work. So I'm hoping in our time together today to be able to speak to all of this. Yeah, Iris, I'm always curious about what we can learn from children about SEL. Absolutely. I think that was the story of my journey. Thank you, Iris, that I thought I already knew everything there was to know. And then my kids came along and I'm like, square one. Like it was a humbling knock, but certainly there is so much to learn from children and how they navigate the world. And how we just grow in our own social and emotional competence when we learn to meet them where they're at, because it requires on our part, right? So much regulation, so much more trying to understand emotions in themselves and ourselves. Yeah, so thank you for that, Iris. Okay, so I'm going to jump into the first block, which is around safe and nurturing relationships and environments. And really the biggest idea here is that kids do well when they feel safe and secure. That's it. And the sense of security and connection that positive relationships and safe environments can provide really is the foundation. It is most of the work of promoting social and emotional development. And I'm suspecting that I'm probably preaching to the converted here when I talk about security and relationships. I think that if you're in this work, you probably have a really grounded sense of the importance of feeling secure. But yeah, for those of you who might like to hear a little bit more about it again or hear about it differently, I'll just speak to very quickly to secure attachment relationships. Yeah, and I know that many of you already know this, but having a warm, responsive caregiver that children develop an attachment to plays such an important role. And what that looks like is when an infant is first born and, you know, they're so little and so fresh to the world and they're crying because there's something that's in distress. And whenever they cry, somebody comes and rocks them and speaks to them in a soothing voice and responds to them. And then they cry again and someone comes back and soothes them again. This interaction, this warm and responsive interaction essentially provides the infant with two really important messages. One is that they're not alone and they're loved, that they're cared for and they're safe. Like that's four messages. I apologize. The main one is that they are safe in this world. And then when you cry and someone comes, it also provides this other message that of agency, that you are somebody, that I matter. When I cry, there is a response that I matter. So these two messages, I am safe and that I matter, really sets the foundation for optimal and positive brain development, body development, all development. And that's what happens in the very early with the very early stages of secure attachment relationship building. And then as kids grow up a little bit, many of you will know this too, that then these secure relationships becomes a secure base for which children are more willing to go and explore into the world, but they're also a safe haven. So if anything happens that frightens them or scares them, they run back and right away they can regulate the stress because they know that they're safe. They run back to their attachment figure. And yeah, so these secure relationships really function as a really important base for growing, for optimal growth. And I like to think about it as, you know, as an adult too. I think for me as an adult, and maybe this might apply to you too, it's that feeling that someone has your back, right? Like, so when we know that somebody has our back, and I know, you know, many of you here are my backing relationships, that when someone has your back, we're more able to take risks, to venture further, to do something different. And then when we're in distress, we come back and we go to this person and we're able to regulate our stress as well. So it happens just as much for adults as it is for kids. And I found it really helpful to kind of stop and consider that for myself too. And knowing this means that like any adult really has an opportunity to be this person for children. I'll share my kid, Sienna, was my teenager now, but Sienna was a fairly anxious kid, and going to schools and going to summer camps especially was a very tricky thing for her to do. But one of the things that she does is I think intuitively she identifies one person that she knows to be kind and friendly, and just sort of attaches herself to them. So for 6 years in this elementary school that she was at, it was the lunch lady. Of all people, it was just a lunch lady. And I would go, her name is Donna. Donna, the lunch lady, has a little brood of kids that follow her around and help her wipe tables and clean the kitchen, which is shocking to me because I don't see Sienna cleaning the kitchen much at home. But that's the power of an attachment figure that they have somewhere else, that like when she's feeling anxious at school and I'm not there, that she knows to go and look for Donna and help to clean the kitchen. And somehow that makes her feel safe. And for me, it sort of feels good that she has that too. Yeah, Debbie, you were saying thank you for speaking about this. Yeah, we are learning a lot about I think this is the importance of really speaking to attachment relationships out in the world, because you don't know what you don't know until you know it, right? Like, and I'll admit that when I had my first kid, I did not know at all about attachment relationships. And then I had my second one after. And I think that I'm a very different mother as a result of that. So that speaks to the power of learning and the power of information that I think, parents who leave kids to cry it out are at their wits' end and feel like this is the way to do it, and they've had that advice, but once we learn maybe about attachment relationships, then we can make different choices. But that's, thank you for that sharing. Thanks, Debbie. So what does feeling safe and connected? It makes it possible for kids to participate in daily life without being overwhelmed. Having a very anxious kid, that was a big part of her life, like that she was often overwhelmed with anything new and out of routine that happened in school, but wouldn't be able to function unless she had those strategies or that person that helps her function. So feeling safe and connected really allows for that. It allows for kids to manage new situations, to cope with stress. And when something distressing happens, feeling secure really is such an important factor in helping kids stay present with the challenge that is ahead of them and work through them. And then it helps to more easily calm down and connect with others. And even, even the ability to ask for help really very much depends on whether they're feeling secure and calm. And so then the question is how do we do this? And I'm sure, many of you have examples already. I want to share this little image here. So this is my husband and my family in a tent. I have to say, when I first moved to Vancouver and I heard about this thing called camping, I cannot believe that people do that. It just sounded ridiculous to me. I've always been an urban creature. Like, I grew up in Malaysia and then in Singapore, and for me, the outdoors is terrifying. And I was thinking, why would anybody want to go out, with the knowledge that bears and cougars exist, want to go out into the wilderness and just like throw up a flimsy tent and then live there for several days? Like, it was completely just befuddling for me. But now I'm a convert. I really love camping now. I'll say that. And so here's my reflection. I think that I was the only one that was scared in that tent, because I kept thinking about all the darkness outside and all the possible dangers that were. But I look across and I found that my kids were just completely like chill. They were equally aware of the darkness and the animals that were out there, but they were like getting ready for bed. They were being read their story and they were just about to snuggle up and go to sleep. And so my takeaway from that is really that we play such powerful roles in creating a sense of safety for children, even when the world is not safe. Even if there are lots of things happening, and today there is, right? Like, there is so much that we now know. We're so much more connected with the rest of the world, and there's so much going on that can sometimes really bring a sense of insecurity and knowing that the ground is literally can shake beneath your feet. But as adults, we can play such a significant role in buffering that for children. And so, paying some heed on how and how many of you already do it, how we create this buffer, how we create a sense of security is really important. And so here are some things that I offer. I offer this, like the one, it's to fill the relationship bucket. And yeah, it's filling children up with acts that assure them of your affection, of the connection, of their worthiness. And this can be expressed in so many different ways. It's expressed in words, it's expressed in hugs, if hugs are okay. It's going along with what they love to do. And just remembering who they are, and maybe something had happened last week or they were heading somewhere else, and remembering that and checking with them about it. And essentially, I think all of this is really only possible if we're fully present. So to me, this is about being fully present when we're with the kids, and then shining our full light on them, even for a short moment. Now, I'll be the first to admit that we cannot be present with kids the whole day. Like, I literally cannot. But, being easy on ourselves, and just if there were moments where you can be fully present and offering that, all those acts that assure them of your regard for them, that really helps to create this sense of connection and a feeling of security. Because acts of this are like food for their hearts, right? Like when they're full, they can better cope with challenges that come their way. And then another idea that I want to offer, sorry, I didn't realize you hadn't seen that before. Another idea that I want to offer up to is connect before you direct. And this is an idea from Gabor Mate and Gordon Neufeld. And so the idea there is that they say resist the urge to get them to do something right away if you need them to do something, but rather begin this interaction with doing something that nourishes the connection with them and help them feel seen and valued for who they are. So for me, for example, the way I take this into my practice is when my kids come home from school and they throw their bags on the ground and they throw their jackets on the ground, my inclination is to say, pick up your bag, pick up your jackets, hang it up. But in the moment, I remember to connect before I direct, and I, take a moment to give them a hug, look them in the eye, get down on their level, ask them how their day was, and then, can you please pick up your jacket? Can you please pick up your bag? And so that's just an example of how powerful connect before you direct can be. I just really like this idea. And then the next thing is, helping them become more aware of the community of adults that is around them. So not just the one attachment figure that they might have with you, but also that there are other adults that they can reach out to in their community. And that's part of their resilience as well. Yeah. So you could be, I think as a parent, I encourage them to talk to their teachers, show the teacher this thing you brought back from your holiday. And then it could be also visiting other people in the community around them, around the center that you're at, and just creating those bonds. Fatima, I see. Yeah, that we should always be physically present. And the quality of being matters. And also knowing that, I think that's really important. But I'll talk about self-care later, but also knowing that we can't really be doing that the full day either, because being present does also take up a lot of our cognitive resources as well. Then the next piece is to create safe and predictable environments. I think this is baked into a lot of the centers and the routine of the centers that you're at. So really intentionally thinking about physically, but also emotionally safe environments. Routines are really important. I know for myself as well that when things are uncertain, having things in our day that we can count on that will definitely happen can really feel good. And for some kids, like arriving in a center, leaving their parents might be really hard, but if they know that there was something that was definitely going to be there, that was definitely going to happen, that bit of routine can really help to create that sense of security. And just a couple more tips here, kind of addressing, I want to speak to following their lead first. Just joining in their play, following their lead can help them feel seen and valued, which is a big piece to feeling connected with you. And then finally, addressing emotional needs. And I think this is a really important piece and it's a piece for emotional intelligence more broadly, as well as for working with kids. But understanding that when people come to you with a problem, there are two needs that are presenting themselves. There's the one that is spoken, that is obvious, but there's also maybe an underlying need that maybe isn't so obvious. And so I know, for example, that if my kid keeps coming to me and again and again and again for something, if I solve a problem, they come up with another. And at some point, I realized that maybe there was a need for attention, a need for connection that wasn't being met. And if I just took the time, instead of quickly solving their problems, to sit down with them and just have a moment of connection where I do something with them and follow their lead in something, and then I tap out, that's going to solve the problem for a little while. And there is that underlying need has been met. I know this as an adult as well. I'll share this story with you because this happened kind of recently. There was a day where I was having a really rough day. I had woken up late, and then there was a bunch of things that went wrong. And because I was late for a bunch of other things. So by 7 o'clock that night, when my husband came home, I was not in a good mood. And he's like, "How was your day?" And I said, "Oh, I had a terrible day. My day was crap. This happened and this happened and then this happened. And it's just so frustrating." And then he says, "Oh, you know what you should do? I think you should just wake up earlier." And that, I hear someone laughing. Yeah, right. Like that did not address my emotional need. That, in fact, it escalated it into a whole other sphere. Because he thought it was fixing my problems, but really what I needed was for someone to say, "Oh man, that sucks for you. Sounds like you've had a really rough day. It really sucks to be you today. And then what do you need?" So here is just, an example I offer to you, and maybe take a moment to think about that. Like, is there ways that we can better see and respond to emotional needs, and understanding that is a really big piece in helping others feel connected, and that you've got their back. Does that make sense? I'm going to pause for a moment and see if anyone has any questions or comments. So, I've been talking for a while now, and I'm going to hand it over to you for a moment. I have a little Padlet here, and I thought, because we're in this room where folks probably have a lot of experience in taking action to help kids feel safe and secure. And I already see from the chat that many of you do pay attention to the inner worlds of children and do things that help them feel secure and help them feel connected to you. So I'd like to invite you to click on that Padlet link. I'm going to stop sharing, and then hop onto the Padlet, and I'd like everybody to put in one idea. And so this helps us create a bank of ideas here as to how we help to strengthen connections and create a sense of security. Because I'm pretty sure there is a lot of wisdom that is happening in this room. If you have any problems accessing it, please let me know. If you haven't used a Padlet before, it's super intuitive. I think that you click on the little plus sign at the bottom right. And then as you put a little plus sign there, a little post should open up for you. And then you can just write down your idea there. So if everybody can share one thing that they do, or maybe after you've heard this that you want to do, that helps to foster that really important sense of connection and security in kids. Okay, I'm seeing lots of answers and ideas on the Padlet. Thank you very much for doing that. I hope that that's really helpful to everyone. So there's a little theme around the morning mingles. And greeting kids at the door. I'm so happy you're here. Just helping them feel seen and valued the moment that they arrive. Like, that's a really important piece. Getting to the child's level, hearing what they have to say, let them lead, getting to know their interests. Yeah, so I think that means so much to a child. I know it does for my kids, but also so much to me when I know that I'm not just another body in the door, but rather somebody that is known to the people in the space. That's really important. And then lots of things around listening, fostering relationships, and trust. Great. Thank you so much. Okay, how are we doing? Is everyone feeling good and ready to keep going? It's been an hour and a little bit. All right, so I'm going to keep sharing my screen again and move on. Everybody okay? All right, good. So Let me know if you can see my screen. Okay. Great. Okay, so next thing I want to talk about is emotion understanding, which is one of the key skills for fostering social and emotional development. And so emotion understanding is the ability to be aware of and to be able to recognize emotions as they come up in the self and also in others. And we know from lots of research that the ability to be aware of our feelings and to be able to understand and recognize them is foundational for self-regulation, because we can only more successfully regulate what we are aware of and what we know to be coming up. That it is really important for social competence as well. This ability to know that your own feelings are affecting your behavior, but also know that somebody else's feelings are probably going to affect how they respond to you, and that piece is so important. And emotion and understanding is a cornerstone for empathy and compassion, because if we learn to recognize suffering or discomfort or distress in others, then it brings about this motivation for most of us to respond to that and to, in a kind way. And so this is the, in a way, the cornerstone competency for these skills. But these is something that's really important to teach intentionally for kids, to help them grow an awareness of their feelings and have them and provide them with the language to express them. Because depending on where they are in their emotional development, kids often may or may not know what they're feeling and how to feel better. Like they could feel something that's growing inside, that it feels yucky or not yucky, and not really sort of fully understanding that. And sometimes if they're not processed or understood, feelings can become overwhelming. And I'm sure many of you have seen this. I've seen it in my kids, but I've seen it in myself as well, and can get in the way of really being able to regulate their actions, and get in the way of being able to enjoy their time at the center or with others. And so this is an essential skill that is needed for getting along with others. All right, so let's talk about what emotions are. What are emotions? Let's check on your emotion understanding since we're in this room. Why do we have emotions? Does anybody have an answer for that? And you can throw that in the chat. So taking a moment to kind of consider, sometimes emotions really kind of get in the way and of us being the person that we want to be or reacting the way that we want to react. And sometimes emotions do get in the way. So if we have evolved all these years, why do we still hold on to something like emotions? Fatima, sometimes they save us. I agree, but how? Ali, you're saying, is this how the brain processes events? It's part of it. So what we know about emotions is, and Fatima, to save us, they are a critical, they play a survival function, a function to keep us safe. So we know this, for example, from feelings of fear. Like even before the brain sort of understands that something is dangerous, maybe you already feel a sense of fear when you're, for me, sometimes when I'm in a dark car park at night, or the other day we were hiking and we saw a snake, that suddenly that brings up this whole sort of surge of physiological reactions in the body. And then in this moment of feeling fear, you are right away ready to run faster than you've ever run before, right? Like that, your muscles are powerful in the moment, your heart's beating really fast, you're breathing really fast, and you can run very fast. And so when anger happens, it helps us survive by helping us to be stronger and to attack and fight and fight to get what we want when things are in our way. Because just understanding that these are very primitive survival functions, that we've had that limbic brain, we've had this kind of emotional systems wiring mechanism that's within us for, ever since our ancestors are living in the plains and having to battle tigers and fight each other. I'm just going to take a moment to look at the chat. Yeah, there are mental states that are associated with thoughts, feelings. Thank you for that. There is no consensus on definition, and there has been a really interesting book that came out last year that sort of shifted the way we thought about what happens first, whether it's emotions, our mental states, or physical states. But in any case, I think it's really, to me, it's really helpful to know that emotions are our allies in a way, that they help to keep us safe. And when they show up, that they have a function. So first, they're automatic biological responses, which kind of means saying don't get mad is sort of redundant, because by the time you say don't get mad about this, like people are probably already mad about it. So it happens automatically and in reaction to a stimuli. And this stimulus can be real or imagined. We know that kids or people who suffer from anxiety, nothing could have happened in the outside world, but if they're lying there and they're having a thought that is distressing, and they are maybe thinking that when this happened, they can't cope with it, that right away, the body and the physiological changes will happen within the body. And there may not be a real stimulus that is happening in the external world, but the thought would have triggered that emotional reaction. And so understanding, I think really, this is helpful to me, that it's functional, that they are allies that help us survive. When we have an emotion, really, it's saying pay attention, because something is happening that is important to you. So like when we have a feeling, this feeling is getting us to pay attention right away. And then it also provides us with a message. So if you're angry, it's probably that you had a goal and something's in your way. So that's the message. And then it provides you with an energy to deal with that. But also understanding that these are rather primitive systems, and they might not work so well today, because we feel the same way if a bear is charging towards us as, some people experience stress at work when a boss that, or a person that one doesn't like walks into the room, that could trigger off a similar set of responses. And with that understanding, also knowing that there are uncomfortable emotions and comfortable emotions, and they're not really good or bad. They just bring us a message and offer us an energy for us to deal with something. And here's an important idea, that emotions are relatively short-term. In fact, there's a group called 6 Seconds Emotional Intelligence Network, that their 6 seconds in their name comes from this concept that really, when you boil it down, emotions only have a lifespan of 6 seconds, because that's the amount of time it takes for when the brain releases these neurohormones for these to be absorbed into the body and react. But if we feel something more than 6 seconds, it's commonly because there's a cycle that keeps happening that are releasing those neurohormones in our body that is cooking up those physiological reactions. And so to me, I think that this is important to know for emotion regulation, that we can continue being in this emotion. And some of them are thought related. So, to kind of keep going with those thoughts, or we can choose to shift. So that's just helpful to know. So that's my very short spiel on just some background on emotions. There are books and books out there that are fascinating to read about emotions. But to bring us back to the context of the workshop today, just understanding that as an emotional life, that we all feel multiple emotions in a day, and these emotions really affect the way that we respond and react and react to each other. So it's really helpful then to teach about emotions, to bring emotions out of to not have them be invisible, but rather to have them be visible and seen and spoken about in the spaces between us, because that's how we learn about it. I think in my upbringing, I learned about emotions when I feel them, and I learned about them in understanding that some things are wrong and some things are right. Like as a kid, if I was angry, that was really not a good thing in my family. It was seen as disrespectful. So I got in trouble for getting angry a lot. And that was how I learned that I was angry and that was not okay. But there's different ways to learn about it. And part of social and emotional development promotion is helping kids come to an open understanding about what emotions are. So teaching about them intentionally is helpful. And I just want to also speak to an idea here by Dr. Daniel Siegel around Name It to Tame It. So the idea here is that he says that when we're offered a word that feels right for what we're feeling, for the emotion that we're having inside, and if our brains are in an MRI scanner while this is happening, when we speak the word or when we are offered a word for that, for what we're feeling, the thinking brain releases these calming neurotransmitters down to our limbic brains, and it helps the emotional brain calm down. So to me, that is like a really important piece of information to know. And I know it myself, that when I'm worried and I haven't said it, that it just builds within me. But if I say to somebody, gosh, I'm feeling really worried about this, that somehow brings it into a place where it feels safer and I feel a bit calmer. And so this is a helpful thing to know with kids too, that if we can intentionally enrich the emotional vocabulary around them, that we can provide them with many different words to anchor their sort of internal feelings to, and there is a way for them to express and understand what they're feeling inside, that can help them calm down right away. That can start to help them calm down and help them regulate their feelings. I'm just going to take a moment to look at the chat. Ali, what is your #1 book for recommendations about emotions? Holy moly, I have so many. And for children, after that, 6 seconds. Let me come back to you about that. I will compile a list, and maybe I'll pull a list together and send it to Shannon, and then maybe this can be distributed out. But yeah, thank you for that question. Yeah, so just some ways to teach about emotions, and you probably have many already. It's really helpful to use emotion cards, like the one here, just helping to start to connect for children a look on the face and what that feeling might be in words. And there's so many ways to use emotion cards in the center. We can use them to talk about our own feelings. We can use them to express maybe a feeling that a character is having in a storybook. And, having colors is a really good idea too. You can have them color a feeling that they have. We can point to feelings in songs. Songs are such a lovely way to get in touch with feelings. So maybe at the center, we can play a song that is happy, and then sort of speak to how one might feel listening to it, but also maybe play a song that is wistful or calming, and also speak to that feeling in song. Or maybe asking kids, like, how do you feel when you hear this? How does it make your heart feel? How does it make your body feel? And just helping them to just bringing more awareness to these unseen things that happen within the body. And then I think importantly to say that it is common, that we all have feelings. And yeah, like that it's not just them, but it's everybody. To draw and color feelings, it could be really helpful too. Feelings in books and stories. So as we read stories, even pointing out, how do you think she feels in this? Or how do you think they feel in that? How do you think the little doggy feels when this happens? And just like adding that extra layer of speaking to stories. And this is something I used to do, which sounds a little creepy, but I would sit with my kids in the playground and I would sort of point out looks on different people's faces. Like, look at that kid, how do you think he's feeling? What do you think his day has been like? And then look at that mom. Oh man, that mom looks a little tired. How do you think she's feeling? What do you think has happened? And so really starting to grow this awareness of the inner lives of people, that growing this awareness that people maybe are feeling something, and then they're feeling something as a result of something else happening in their lives. And so this is one of I think, a really helpful way to grow emotion understanding and grow these skills. So I'm just going to take a pause here and kind of see if anybody else has any suggestions or ideas. So there's lots of science behind this, like there is evidence to say that kids who have adults around them that discuss feelings a lot more, and this is a preschool study, these kids demonstrated stronger emotional management. They showed a little bit more attentiveness and concern to others. So speaking to kids about feelings and giving them the language to express them can be really helpful. Oh, I have one more. Sharing your own feelings and behaviors. So maybe saying to them how you're feeling in a certain day and what made you feel that way. I was having a chat with a friend who, as a kid, also growing up in a fairly conservative family. I'm from a Chinese background, so my friend is also grew up in a Chinese family, and he said that when he was a kid, he used to feel like it was wrong to be angry because nobody else was angry around him. So he felt really bad for being angry, but he was angry quite a lot. So as a kid, he would just try to he would feel so bad about being angry that when little bits of anger starts to emerge, he would feel scared of this feeling. And so this is something that I think he's working through in his life right now, but I think that's a really good example of how important it is to normalize people having feelings around kids so that they know that they're not alone and that this is something that we can recognize and we can work through together. There's a question in the chat about screen time. Oh, that's a really big question. How does screen time change children? I don't know. I think, well, I have a lot of thoughts about this. I think this could be another speaker series to consider. I think that there's a lab at UBC that looks at the benefits and also the challenges that screen time brings, and it's something that's evolving and that we're understanding. I think that screens and connectivity allow us to learn a lot more from other people. I can see in my older kid especially that it is a huge and important tool for connection to others, and that maybe she is more willing to share how she feels in these channels than in real life. And I'm not, I'm sad about that, but I think that that's also the landscape of the world now. So it's not a question I can answer really quickly. I also think for sure that there are detrimental effects, that we know that we've learned so much about emotions in those present social interactions with others, in looking at their faces and hearing their tone of voice. And so I think screens probably takes away from a bit of that learning, but I want to also be optimistic and say that it's opening up maybe other ways of learning and interacting, and that it's an emotional space, like it's not an unemotional space, on screens. So I think I'm just going to leave it at that. Like I'm not a big expert on it. I observe and I think about it a lot, and maybe this could be a topic for a future speaker series to note. I'm just going to leave that there if that's okay. Yeah, so I'm looking at the time now. Let me check out the time. I was going to do a breakout session here on some ways that you teach kids about emotions, but I think because I have a little bit more that I want to speak to before we finish today, I want to get you away on your Saturday on time, that I probably won't do a breakout here, but I'd love for you to put some ideas in the chat to some ways that you teach kids about emotions or see emotions in themselves. And that would be really helpful for others, because this is a sharing space, right? Yeah, I'm just going to look in the chat for a moment. I'm going to give like a minute or so for folks to just put some thoughts in the chat, and that allows me to take a little break. Sammy, it takes a long time to make sense with emotions, even if the children are able. That is absolutely true. Like it's Vygotsky has this idea, right, that around language, that really we don't fully come to understand the actual concepts until later in childhood, later in development, like in our teenage years. But really, anytime before that, we're testing out with language. We're just sort of saying things and seeing how they feel. And one example I give of this is I have a friend whose kid said, "I hate you," the other day to her, and she was really, really upset. And the kid was 5. But I said that, you know, this word hate isn't the word hate that we understand as adults. It doesn't come with all that weight. The kid is probably trying out this word and seeing how it might fit. But the more often we use a word, the more opportunities we have to marinate this word in experiences, and then the more able we are to come to a fuller understanding of what a word is. So I very much agree with you, Sammy. I think it takes a long time for anybody. I think even for some adults that I know, and myself included, I'm still grappling with what for example, shame is. But it's important to use those words already, so that if we put them out in the world, there's an opportunity for things to attach to them, and we can come to a deeper understanding. And so the earlier we start this process with kids, then the more ability they have to build up that understanding across time. Zara, is that maybe why sometimes if they understand their peers' emotions and frustration, if they understand their peers' frustrations, do you mean frustrations still keep bothering them? Yeah. Yeah, emotion understanding is only one step of the way. Like for me, I understand that I get very irritated and annoyed at my kids sometimes, but I still have to do the work in regulating it, which is something I want to talk about next. Ali, that's a great idea. Open with your emotions and verbalize what I'm moving through to also show it's a process. Fantastic. I think it's so precious for children to see that, right? Like that if you say, oh, I'm getting really frustrated because I'm trying to open this box and it's just not working for me, and it makes me want to throw it, but I'm going to take a deep breath. I'm going to calm myself down, and then I'm going to start ripping it with my fingers and maybe go and get a pair of scissors. This just happened to me. And you know, and now I feel better. So externalizing those internal processes really helps to normalize that we all have feelings. Again, I know I'm repeating myself, but then there are also strategies to manage these feelings. And Debbie, giving words to what I'm seeing. I see you have tears and you're making sad sounds. Oh, that's so lovely. Reflecting back to them how they're presenting, and then having them know that you understand that that's linked to a feeling. And I also allow myself to express how I'm feeling. Great. That's fantastic. Abby. Hello, Abby. It's good to see you here. I used to conduct a music time at a family center. Yeah, they get to share how different songs make them feel. That's amazing too, because then it's a really safe and fun space to explore feelings and how, you know, that makes you feel in the body. That's a really great idea, Abby. And yeah, you shared we're planting seeds of self-regulation. Exactly. So this is one part of the work in talking about feelings and normalizing our inner processes. That is planting the seed for self-regulation. Great. Oh, I'm happy to hear and look at all the comments in the chat. Please do go on throwing things in the chat as we go along. All right, so I'm just going to mosey along here and just to say, you know, we can intentionally find moments to teach it, but it's also helpful to weave it into how we show up and in our daily lives. So here's just a reminder that like emotion teaching doesn't have to be limited to a specific moment of like storytelling or music time or playtime, circle time, but it could be part of how you show up. So maybe reminding yourself to notice feelings as in others as you go along. And I think, yeah, Debbie gave a good example. I see that you have tears. I see that you're making some sad sounds. I see that, you know, you're hiding in a corner. And then as you notice the feelings, reflecting that back to them, asking open questions. I wonder why you're feeling this way. I wonder if something happened. And then practicing active listening as well after you ask those questions, and helping them label feelings. We've just talked about why that's important. And really important piece is to validate their experiences. And that really helps with that kind of the underlying emotional need I was talking about earlier. So when we say, oh man, that's really tough, or if I were you, I'd feel the same way too, then poof, you've validated a feeling. And that could be the key to turning things around, because it's so powerful when children, but also as adults, when we feel seen and when we feel understood, and that piece of validation can really be such an important piece. So weaving this into your daily life. The other thing I would say is I will be sharing these slides with you, so just know that you're gonna have this to refer to later on, because I know I'm throwing a lot of information at you. Okay. Yeah, so I want to talk about emotion regulation in our last bit of time together. And so emotion regulation speaks to the ability to manage one's thoughts, feelings, and actions. Has anybody nailed this? Is there anyone here that is like, yep, done it. I built up this skill. I'm 100%. I'm a ninja at regulating consistently. If you are, I'd love for you to tell me what the secret is. Yeah, so just to point out that this, Debbie, absolutely not. Yeah, same here. After the hours of 7 p.m., much harder for me, for sure. Yeah, when I'm feeling stressed and if I've had enough sleep. So good, just know it. I just want to start by saying, emotion regulation is a lifelong process. It's a lifelong development. It doesn't happen in a linear fashion where we just get better and better and better at it over time. But, like everybody regresses. Parents, like adults regress, kids regress. And it's got its ups and downs. So it's something that we're all working at. And it's hard to nail. Although I feel like some people have, but I certainly haven't. Yeah, so it's the ability to manage your feelings, thoughts, and actions. Super important for learning, relationships, success, super important for anything. Just you being here right now, continuing to listen to my voice and paying attention, that is a lot of regulation that's happening, because you could be pulled in other things that you're going to do. You could be thinking about something else. But if you come back to my voice and come back to this course, that is already doing lots of regulation. So it's important for learning. It's important for being with others, right? Some pieces here is that it's completely developmental, that we can only regulate, kids can only regulate to the extent that their brains allow them to. And we know that brains continue to grow well into its 20s. So just knowing that, to temper those expectations. And again, that little piece that we're planting seeds, right? Emotion regulation is completely goal directed. So it's the opposite of autopilot. It's not reacting, but it is responding mindfully with a goal in mind, like knowing what you want to do and doing it thoughtfully. So because it's goal directed and it's not the intuitive thing to do, it always takes effort. Like emotion regulation or self-regulation is always effortful. And so here I want to speak to a piece on co-regulation, that it's impossible to get to self-regulation without going through a journey of co-regulation. And I spoke to this in the beginning, that we're really just planting seeds here. So this is a graph that I really like, and that sort of wavy line there is kind of taking us through from infant and toddler to preschool through to young adult. And really understanding that when we talk about regulation, that it is something that the adult does with kids, that we are their co-pilot. In a way, we're filling in for that part of their brain that hasn't developed yet. And we're offering strategies to help them co-regulate. So as you can see, for infant, in the infant, there is hardly any regulation that's possible on their own. And then we're fully regulating them by, rocking them when they're in distress, or like offering food, thinking that they might be hungry, and kind of regulating their sleep, because sleep is important. And so we're doing a lot to co-regulate. And it's only when they reach young adulthood that the infrastructure of the brain is there that allows them for the possibility of fully self-regulating. And even then, it's a possibility, right? Like I'm in my 40s and I am still working hard at regulating. That is not something I take for granted, but I know that the potential and the possibility for full self-regulation is here now. And so the other thing to note in this graph is that there are two periods of like really fast brain development. It happens in preschool and it happens in teenagehood. So that's when rapid sort of brain development happens, and there are opportunities as well to really support the growth of self-regulation. And then the other thing I want to point out, which I think is important to point out every time we have any chart that includes stages and ages, that we know it's not the same for every kid, right? Like we know that we could have a very well-regulated 5-year-old and a very dysregulated 10-year-old. So also fully understanding as we think about helping kids regulate that there are so many factors that affect their ability. It's not just brain development and their capacity for it, but it's the environments they come from. You know, it's how stressed out they are in their lives, what's going on in the home, what's happening in the community, and maybe their upbringing till then, the experiences that they've had. We know that adverse childhood experiences has a real impact on development, right? So always kind of having that at the back of your mind as you think about seeding those seeds for self-regulation. All right, so self-regulation takes time to develop because it does depend on a very special part of the brain. And we call this executive functions. I think executive functions should be its own workshop, but just very quickly, it's a set of cognitive processes that allows for purposeful behavior. So part of it is working memory. It allows us to remember what we need to remember. So for example, if you're reading a book, you're really exercising working memory because you need to remember who the characters are and what happens in order for the rest of it to make sense. We know that inhibitory control is like a big part of executive functions that is important for regulation. So being able to inhibit these impulses that come up right away and choose differently, choose to react differently. And then selective attention, which is something you're doing right now. If you're listening to me, you're selectively attending to me, even though there are all these other things that you can be focusing on. I was going to do a little exercise here. I might just do it. So there's this thing called a Stroop test. And a Stroop test is a test in the lab that basically tests how well your executive functioning is happening. So here I'm going to ask you to do something brave and bold. I'm going to ask everybody, if you're listening to me, to unmute yourself. Do it. So everybody unmute yourself. And then I'm going to do a little test of how your executive functioning is happening at the moment. So I'm going to wait a moment for people to unmute themselves. Okay, I see a few people unmuting yourself. And so here is the challenge for you. No shaming here, no stress here, but I'm going to give you a Stroop test. And I'll show you a line in a moment, to as fast and as loudly as possible, as fast and as loudly as possible, you are going to say the colors and not the words you're presented. Okay? You ready? Say ready if you're ready.
Ready.
Oh, great. Oh, yeah, I love hearing your voice. Okay, everybody ready? Say the colors and not the words as fast as possible. Go!
Yellow.
Blue,
Yellow.
yellow, orange, green, red,
yellow, blue,
black.
red.
Blue,
yellow,
orange, green, red,
red.
white, yellow, blue.
Great. That was pretty fast.
Yellow, blue,
So
red.
this is not the challenge because as you can see, the colors and the words are the same. This is your baseline, okay? So this is the baseline that you're coming in with this morning. Faster for some than others, I'll say that. And then the next thing I want you to do is I'm going to show you the next line. And this time, the colors and the words are going to be jumbled up. And again, I want you to do it as fast as possible, as loud as possible. But remember, working memory, remember to say the color and not the words. Okay, ready? Say you're ready if you're ready.
Ready.
Great. Go. Go, go, go.
Red.
Blue.
Orange,
Yellow.
Yellow,
Red.
white,
orange, green.
That's orange.
Oh, I could hear the labor in your words. Was that a lot slower? Oh, thank you for playing. Okay, like if you like, you can mute yourself. Yeah. Thank you for playing.
Thank you.
Oh, how hard was that? That was harder, yes?
Yeah.
And that is harder because you are exercising your executive functioning. You are like inhibiting the impulse to say the words as they are, and you are remembering the rules, and you are attending to the colors. And so there was a lot happening in your brain there. It was a bit of a challenge. And I like to say that that is happening in the brain of a kid that has to wait their turn at the slides, or a child that wants to like grab this toy, but know that they're not allowed to grab this toy. So this is happening in the moment. They're like, oh, I know I shouldn't, but I want to. And that's really hard. So I wanted to give you an experience of how it feels to effortfully exercise that. Oh, Ali, you had to hold your head to do that. Yeah, I often have to stare really hard, which really hurts my eyes as well. So that was your prefrontal cortex working. It was your executive functioning working. So how do we grow self-regulation? I think we need to start with the health of our executive functioning. We need to start by strengthening these functions. And here I just offer a few ways that have been shown in science. So we know that fitness, for example, exercise is really important. If you, the fitness of the body is very much linked to the fitness of the brain. If generally, like the more fit we are, the more the healthier the executive functioning is. And this works kind of over time, but also in the moment. Like if you're feeling like your executive functioning is going, if you go out and take a walk around the block and come back, like you'll find that you're able to pay attention a bit better. And then there's lots of signs that show doing play acting is really helpful for growing executive functions, because when you pretend to be a character, you have to remember what character you are. You have to interact in that character, right? You have to inhibit being yourself. If you're pretending to be a dog, then you have to stop being a human to be a dog. And so having those like play acting activities for kids to have is really helpful for growing their executive functioning. And then sleep has been shown to directly have an impact on executive functioning. On the top left, that's my kids sleeping. That's how they used to sleep, with one leg out. I feel like they always feel like maybe there's something better going on and they're not fully committed to going to bed. But sleep is really important, and we know that ourselves, right? Like if you've had a night where you haven't slept well, I definitely feel that I can regulate myself. I can't regulate myself as well the next day. So great ways to strengthen EFs: sleep, do anything in relation to others. So there is on the bottom left, there is a choir, anything that you do with people, because you have to practice regulating in order to work as a group, really helps those executive functioning. So I just want to offer these ideas here to say that it's not necessary that we go to do specific things, like do Stroop tests or do like sign up for their apps now that help you train executive functioning. But in our daily lives, if we choose to do something different, if we sleep better, like have more movement and, engage in activities with others, that really already helps. Okay, and I'm just going to quickly get my time. So the other thing that is helpful to note, and I know this is a very professionally done slide, it's not, just to understand that there is a zone of optimal functioning or a zone of optimal regulation. And so this zone is somewhere in the middle. And the idea here is that at all times, we are on this escalator. We are either on our way to flipping our lid, or, as we go up the escalators, our emotions are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And at some point, it overwhelms our thinking brain and we just completely lose it. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with this zone. I am. That's when I, like yell, or I get so mad, or I get completely overwhelmed and I don't really know what I'm saying anymore. Words are just coming out of my mouth. And then on the other end is when there are so little feelings and so much thinking that at some point you become disconnected or disengaged. And that's also a difficult place to regulate, because there's just so little motivation that's there to do anything. So being in the zone is really helpful. And that's a big piece of co-regulation, that we can help kids stay in the zone. Then they're much better able to respond and try to regulate. But knowing that with kids, the zone is probably a little narrower than with adults, right? Does that make sense to people? Yeah. Yeah, so then the question here is, so how do we keep kids in the zone? Like how do we keep them in the zone? Oh, I should say that when they are up here, when they've lost it, it's no point saying anything. When we flip the lid, it means that the thinking brain is thus not online anymore. And really, we're just reacting with those emotions. And in this moment, it's not helpful. I've learned this the hard way, to say to kids, but we talked about this. Remember, this is not okay. Like any words are just going to wash over their head. So really, when kids have completely flipped the lid, the opportunity there is to tune in, to get on their level, to connect with them so that we can help bring them back, help co-regulate them back into the zone. Yeah, so how do we help kids stay in the zone? You probably have lots of ideas. Here is one stuff that I try to use. I notice when they're having some feelings, and I try to get to them before they get batted out of the zone. And oftentimes it is paying attention to what the body needs, and maybe, you know, the body needs food, water, a little hug, to be connected, or some rest. I don't know about you, but I have this thing called hanger, which means that when I'm hungry, it's really close to anger. So one of the ways that I keep myself in the zone is to feed myself. I don't know if that's shared with anybody else. Yeah, but so also thinking about how you keep yourself in the zone. And then we co-regulate too by changing the environments, right? Like sometimes we dim the lights, sometimes we put music on, and that just helps to shift the emotional landscape a little bit. I keep them in the zone. And then, as I started today's session with, we pay attention to transitions. If they're coming in from outside to circle time, knowing that the bodies just can't sit down and circle right away, but maybe we need to do something in that transition from outside play to sitting down for a snack, or sitting down at circle, and having them do some exercises to calm their bodies down before they begin. Yeah, paying attention to transitions. Are they ready for what's coming ahead? But also asking yourself, am I ready for what's coming ahead? And doing something to help with that transition too. But what if they've completely lost it? I will admit to having taken this photo of my kid. Probably not the thing to do when they've completely lost it, is take a photo of them. So, but you know, here's what to do, and here's how what I'm going to recommend. If they've completely lost it, words are not going to help you. Words are not your friend. So this comes from Daniel Siegel, but also work by John Gottman. And they say that when kids have completely, and anybody is out of the zone and they've been completely overwhelmed by feelings and completely emotionally hijacked, what really matters in that moment is connection. So he calls it attunement. And I think someone had mentioned that maybe in the chat as well, that tuning in. So in this moment, really tuning in, being fully present, and focusing on connection. And what this means is activating all these other parts of our human connection that isn't words. So tone of voice, facial expressions, touch, if touch is welcome in this moment, and just presence, like a warm, calming presence, getting on their level and tuning in so that they don't feel alone. Because when we are overwhelmed with feelings, sometimes that could be a really isolating experience. You feel like nobody understands, nobody gets it, and I'm all on my own in this moment. So tuning in, connecting, and then when the body has calmed down, that could take some time. Label the emotion for them. So it looks like you're feeling sad. I wonder if you're feeling worried. And then validating, as I was explaining, goes a long way, right? And then explore solutions and options after that. So not right away, but paying attention to the attunement first. Okay, so just to summarize, to help build emotion regulation, to sow those seeds for self-regulation, is kids need to feel safe. And if they feel safe, they might need help being in the zone, being regulated, to co-regulated to be in the zone. It was helpful to have activities to help them grow their executive functioning, to learn strategies to calm their bodies and mind. And maybe this is taking a deep breath. This is walking away. This is sort of blowing bubbles or doing something that brings them joy. And, you know, kids need to have an adult to help co-regulate, to co-pilot and be the part of the brain that they haven't yet grown. Okay. That's my spiel on emotion regulation. Do you have any questions or anything for me? All right, so I'm going to come to the last part of my presentation now. I'm noticing that there's a couple of minutes left, so I'll be quick about this. I just want to say, we've learned a lot today, and you're probably thinking, oh, there's a lot I have to do. But what's the most important factor here? The most important factor here is simply your own well-being. That if we're not feeling well, we're not in the zone, and we're not able to make the decisions that we want to make to be our better selves, right? Like, I think that is just the truth of it. The truth of it is, as you've learned from, the bit of science that I've shared as well, is that when we, the adults around them, are stressed, exhausted, unhappy, we ourselves don't have access to that part of the brain that makes good decisions. You can know all this information, but unless you're feeling balanced, you're feeling well, you're managing your stress, it is really hard to access the strategies that you have. So looking after yourself simply is part of this work. Like, that's just the truth of it. Because, the research shows that we have limited cognitive resources, limited physical resources, and limited brain resources to regulate. And we need to look after ourselves. So just really understanding this piece here, that I have this on my bathroom wall, guys. I have this that says, my time alone is for everyone's safety. Self-care is not selfish. It is for you that I look after myself, have these moments of quiet and calm, because then it helps me be better able to care for other people. So just wanting to plug that in today, and knowing that that's really, really important. So how do we look after our own well-being? Firstly, know that you live in a soft animal body, and every animal body needs to move, needs to rest, needs to be nourished. So it's not a luxury to sleep, to rest, to go to the bathroom, to eat something healthy, but it's a necessity. It's like scheduled car maintenance. We just do it because we are part, we live in these bodies. And then being kind to ourselves, like, I think a lot of us have those inner critics, and there's always things, you should do, need to do better. But there are also a lot of things that we're doing amazing right now. And just you showing up today really speaks to that. So I just want to introduce this idea of self-compassion, which is made out of three things. It's made out of self-kindness. So knowing in moments of difficulty that to turn to yourself and be kind to yourself. Understanding common humanity, know that you're not the only person that's suffering or is challenged or finds this hard. Everybody does, and everybody makes mistakes, and everybody comes back up. And so it's okay. And then finally, cultivating mindfulness. And that's been a really helpful part of my journey, to just take moments of pause and realizing when I'm feeling triggered, when I'm feeling distressed, when I'm starting to get out of the zone, and noticing what I'm saying to myself, and then maybe changing the record on that. And then one more thing that's really important is just do what brings you joy, like fill that bucket. And that is so important, right? Like that we need to make time for things that bring us joy, because it simply fills the bucket that we have to draw from to care for others on a daily basis. All right. Okay, I'm going to leave you with a quote from Parker Palmer, one of my favorite writers. Self-care is never a selfish act. It is simply good stewardship of the only gift I have, the gift I was put on earth to offer others. Anytime we can listen to our true self and give it the care it requires, we do so not only for ourselves, but for the many others whose life we touch. And that is just the truth. All right. I'm going to leave you with some key messages today. They're a quick summary of what we've gone through. I hope you've had a great time today listening, and thank you for all the engagement. I really appreciate it every time you put something in the chat or in the Padlet or say something. That we can, there are important windows, the early years, and there's many ways we can promote SED intentionally, and that your own well-being is part of the work.